Millionaire marries beggar just to spite ex. Then he does the unthinkable. Emily Richardson. Montgomery looked stunning in her Tiffany & Co. wedding gown worth $500,000, while the high society guests of New York City whispered, in horror. The ceremony in the Upper East Side, the city's most elite neighborhood, had turned into a scandal when, instead of walking down the aisle with Brandon Thompson, heir to the country's largest construction company, the bride arrived, accompanied by a disheveled man in worn-out clothes. I, Michael Carter, take Emily Richardson Montgomery as my lawful wife, the man said firmly, surprising the guests who expected stuttering or discomfort from someone clearly out of place. Richard Montgomery, the bride's father and one of the biggest names in American agribusiness, watched the scene with his face red from suppressed rage. His wife, Catherine, held a handkerchief to her mouth to hide her silent sobs. In the front row, Brandon Thompson, the jilted ex-fiancé abandoned 3 months before the wedding, kept his eyes fixed on the couple with an expression mixing disbelief and something Emily couldn't quite decipher. The judge, visibly uncomfortable, continued the ceremony while the hired photographers captured every moment of what would be the talk of New York City's social circles for months. Emily smiled, not with the typical joy of a bride, but with the satisfaction of someone executing a meticulously planned revenge. 3 months earlier, Brandon had ended their 5-year relationship with a text message while Emily was choosing her wedding bouquet. The reason? I need freedom to find myself. A week later, the gossip columns already showed photos of him in Miami with a digital influencer. You may kiss the bride, the judge announced, bringing Emily back to the present. Michael cupped her face in his calloused hands and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. It wasn't the rehearsed peck they had agreed on, quick and barely touching. This one had something in it that unsettled her for a moment. The reception took place in the grand ballroom of the most exclusive hotel on Fifth Avenue. While the guests kept a cautious distance from the couple, Emily watched with satisfaction as Brandon's discomfort grew, downing his 3rd glass of champagne in less than half an hour. Your family seems thrilled with the situation, Michael remarked with mild irony, sipping a glass of water. Your father already tried to pay me off twice to disappear. And why didn't you take it? Emily asked, adjusting her diamond tiara. That wasn't our deal, Miss... Sorry, Mrs. Carter, he replied with a restrained smile. Emily had found him sitting on a bench in Washington Square Park 2 weeks earlier. It wasn't exactly what she'd planned, but seeing him there, worn, but clean clothes, she decided he'd be perfect for her scheme. She offered him $100,000 for a year of fake marriage on the condition that he show up at the altar exactly as he was, unshowered, in old clothes, the complete opposite of Brandon. To her surprise, Michael agreed with just one condition. He wouldn't lie about his name or identity. I can be your fake husband, but I won't be a fake person, he had said. Emily agreed, thinking it irrelevant. Who would care about the real identity of a man everyone assumed was a vagrant? Emily, can we talk? Brandon's voice interrupted her thoughts. He stood before them with an expression she couldn't fully read. Of course, darling, she replied with false sweetness. My husband and I are at your service. Brandon hesitated, then extended his hand to Michael. Congratulations on the marriage. I'm Brandon Thompson. Michael Carter, replied the man, shaking the offered hand with a firmness that surprised Brandon. Carter? Brandon questioned, slightly furrowing his brow. That name sounds familiar. It's the most common last name in the United States, Michael remarked with a polite smile. It'd be strange if you didn't know at least one. Brandon studied him for a few seconds before turning his attention back to Emily. I hope you'll both be very happy. Truly. There was something in his voice that sounded like genuine sincerity and that irritated Emily more than any angry reaction she had hoped to provoke. As Brandon walked away, she noticed Jessica, her childhood best friend, subtly waving from a corner. Excusing herself from Michael, she made her way over. Have you completely lost your mind? Jessica whispered as soon as Emily was within earshot. Where did this man come from? He looks like he stepped out of an 80s movie about a homeless guy who's secretly a millionaire in disguise. Don't be ridiculous, Emily replied, though the same thought had crossed her mind. He's exactly what he seems. Then why? Is he talking to the ambassador about international politics? Jessica tilted her chin toward them. Emily turned quickly. Across the room, Michael was gesturing discreetly, while the British ambassador to the United States listened intently, nodding occasionally. He must be making things up, Emily murmured, but her conviction wavered. The evening wore on until Emily felt a hand on her elbow. It was her mother, eyes swollen from crying and a forced smile for the nearby guests. "We need to talk in private, dear," Catherine said in a controlled voice. In an adjacent room, away from prying eyes, Catherine dropped her perfect hostess act. "What's gotten into you? Do you have any idea what you're doing to our family, to your future?" "I know exactly what I'm doing, Mother," Emily replied, keeping her composure. "I'm marrying a man who, unlike Brandon, won't abandon me for a pretty face 3 months before the wedding." "Don't be naive," Catherine raised her voice. "This man is obviously after your money, our standing, just like Brandon was," Emily shot back. "At least with Michael, I know exactly where I stand. Our arrangement is clear." "Arrangement?" Catherine paled. "What are you talking about?" Emily realized her mistake too late. She hadn't meant to reveal the true nature of her marriage to anyone. "Nothing, Mother. Just a figure of speech. Your father will cut you off from the company and your inheritance if you keep this madness up," Catherine threatened. "He's already speaking with the lawyers." "Let him," Emily replied, though her chest tightened. Montgomery Agricultural Enterprises was both her legacy and her passion. She had studied business and economics at the finest universities to one day take the helm. When she returned to the main room, she found Michael surrounded by a small group of women, laughing at something he'd said. Among them was her Aunt Margaret, a 70-year-old woman known for her sharp tongue and for never approving any of Emily's suitors. "Oh, there you are, dear." Margaret smiled as Emily approached. "Your husband is delightful. He was just telling us about his time working on the irrigation project in the Southwest." Emily looked at Michael in surprise. They hadn't discussed a fictional backstory for him. "Is that so?" she asked with a tense smile. "Yes," he replied smoothly. "I was explaining how the system we implemented helped small farmers increase their yield even during droughts." The rest of the evening passed under disapproving glances, curiosity, and, much to Emily's frustration, growing admiration for Michael, who seemed perfectly at ease among people who should have intimidated him. When they finally entered the limousine that would take them to Emily's home in Beverly Hills, she could no longer hold back her questions. "Who are you, really?" she asked, as soon as the door closed. "Exactly who I said I am," he replied, loosening the tie Emily had insisted he wear during the ceremony. "Michael Carter, 42 years old, currently without a fixed residence." "And where does all this knowledge about international politics and irrigation systems come from?" Michael smiled slightly, a gesture that made him surprisingly attractive despite his unshaven beard and overgrown hair. "Not everyone on the street was born there, Emily. Some of us had lives before." There was something in the way he said it that made her feel small, despite all her money and social standing. An uncomfortable mix of shame and curiosity began to stir inside her. The mansion in Beverly Hills was lit up when they arrived. Emily watched Michael's face as he took in the sight of the 2-acre property, with its meticulously maintained gardens and the imposing 3-story neoclassical structure. "Impressive," he remarked without the awe she had expected. "You'll have your own room," Emily said as they crossed the marble-floored foyer. "On the 3rd floor, far from mine." "As you wish," he replied simply. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The first week of living together was strange. Emily expected Michael to spend his days watching TV or exploring the mansion with childlike fascination. Instead, he woke up early, made his own coffee, much to the maid's surprise, and spent hours in the library reading or in the garden studying the plants with technical interest. He avoided using the available cars and often left on foot, returning hours later without explaining where he'd been. By the second week, Emily returned to work at the Montgomery Agricultural Enterprises office, where her father greeted her with professional detachment, treating her like any other executive, not as his daughter and heir. Her mother's words rang true. She was being gradually sidelined from major decisions. During a particularly tense meeting about expanding operations into the Midwest, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was Brandon, asking to meet for lunch. "Important matter," the message read. The chosen restaurant was discreet, frequented mostly by executives who valued privacy. Brandon was already waiting, impeccable in his Italian suit, with that smile that had once taken her breath away. "You look stunning," he remarked as she sat down. "Let's get straight to the point, Brandon," Emily cut in, maintaining the professional tone she now used as armor. "Of course," he agreed, adjusting his posture. "I want to hire your husband." Emily nearly choked on her water. "Excuse me?" "We're launching a sustainability project at the construction group. Renewable energy, rainwater harvesting, eco-friendly materials. I heard your husband has experience with sustainable irrigation systems." Emily felt a mix of confusion and alarm. How did Brandon know that? And more importantly, was it true? "Michael isn't looking for a job," she replied automatically. "Are you sure?" Brandon pressed. "I'm offering a competitive salary, full benefits, and the chance to implement large-scale projects." He seems like the kind of man who values making a difference. There was something in Brandon's gaze that unsettled her deeply, as if he knew something she didn't. "I'll pass along your offer," she said finally, "but the decision is his." "Of course," Brandon agreed with an enigmatic smile. "After all, you have a modern marriage, don't you? Each with your own independence." The seemingly innocent comment carried an implication that unsettled her the entire way back to the office. That evening, when she arrived home, she found Michael in the backyard, fixing the irrigation system the gardener had deemed beyond repair. "How was your day?" he asked casually when he saw her, as if they were a normal couple. "Interesting," she replied, watching his skilled hands work with the tools. "I had lunch with Brandon today." Michael paused briefly but showed no sign of the jealousy or alarm she might have expected. "And how was it?" "He wants to hire you for his construction company, something about sustainable projects." This time, Michael set down the tool and stood wiping his hands on a rag. "Interesting," he remarked, using the exact same word she had. "You don't seem surprised," Emily observed. "Should I be? A man you've never met in person offers you a job based on party conversations." "Yes. I think surprise would be a normal reaction." Michael studied her for a moment before answering. "There's a lot about me you don't know, Emily. Some of it, Brandon apparently discovered." "So it's true. You really worked with irrigation systems?" "I designed some of the most efficient systems in the Southwest," he replied simply. Before what?" Michael didn't answer right away. He looked up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear in the New York City twilight, rarely visible through the pollution. "Before I lost everything," he finally said. "You should research people better before hiring them for fake marriages, you know?" There was something vulnerable in his voice that unexpectedly touched her. "Dinner is served, ma'am," announced Martha, the housekeeper, from the back door, interrupting the moment. "I'm not hungry," Michael replied. "I'll finish this out here." Emily felt strangely disappointed dining alone that night. The next morning, she found a note on her bedroom door. "I took the job. Starting today. MC." The handwriting was elegant, another unexpected detail. Over the following weeks, Emily and Michael settled into an odd routine. They left for work in the mornings, rarely returning at the same time. Sometimes they dined together, talking about trivial matters. Other times, days passed without them seeing each other. It was like sharing space with a polite stranger. It was on one of those rare evenings as they sat at the dinner table that Emily decided to satisfy her growing curiosity. "How did you end up on the street?" she asked abruptly. Michael finished chewing before answering, another sign of the refinement that didn't match her initial impression of him. "A combination of bad luck, bad decisions, and bad people," he finally replied. "The classic story." I'd like to hear your version. He studied her for a moment, as if gauging whether she was truly interested or just bored. I graduated with a degree in environmental engineering, specialized in water systems, he began. I started an innovative company. We had promising projects, especially for drought-prone regions. An investor took interest, offered funding to expand. Michael paused, taking a sip of water. I signed contracts without reading the fine print, trusting the word of a man who seemed to share my ideals. 6 months later, he drained the company's funds, patented my inventions under his name, and left me with debts I could never repay. That's awful, Emily said, genuinely disturbed. Wasn't there any way to sue? With what money? Michael gave a sad smile. Besides, the contracts I signed gave him legal rights to everything. My lawyer said I didn't have a case. What about your family? Friends? I'm an only child with deceased parents. As for friends, some helped at first, but no one has endless resources to support a bankrupt friend forever. Emily felt a lump in her throat. His story was different from what she had imagined, more complex, more human. How long were you? She couldn't finish the question. On the streets, just over a year, he replied with dignity. Not as long as some, but long enough to learn valuable lessons about human nature. Like what? Like how some people look right through you when they have nothing to gain from your existence, he said, holding her gaze in a way that made her uncomfortable, and how others can surprise you with unexpected kindness. Something about the way he told his story, without self-pity or drama, touched Emily deeply. She had never truly considered the circumstances that could lead someone to lose everything. And now working with Brandon? She left the question hanging. A shadow crossed Michael's face. The project is legitimate and interesting. I'm doing good work. There was something he wasn't saying, Emily realized, but she also noticed for the first time since meeting him a genuine curiosity about his thoughts and feelings. In the days that followed, Emily observed Michael with new eyes. She noticed how he treated every staff member with equal respect, regardless of position, how he left small thank you notes for the cleaning crew, how he fixed broken things around the house without being asked. One evening, returning late from a meeting, she heard music coming from the rarely used music room, untouched since her grandfather's passing. Following the sound, she found Michael at the piano, playing a classical piece she vaguely recognized. His fingers moved with the confidence of someone who had studied for years. Emily lingered in the doorway, watching. There was an expression on his face she had never seen before. Peace, perhaps, or longing. When the music ended, she couldn't help but applaud. Michael turned, startled. I'm sorry, he said, standing quickly. I didn't know you were home. Don't apologize, Emily replied, stepping into the room. You play beautifully. Another hidden talent? My mother was a piano teacher, he explained with a wistful smile. She insisted I learn as a child. I hated the hours of practice back then, but now? Now it's one of the few connections I have left to my past, he said softly. Emily sat beside him on the piano bench. Do you know Gershwin? She asked. He was my grandfather's favorite. A little, Michael answered, positioning his hands over the keys again. The notes of Rhapsody in Blue filled the room, creating an intimacy none of their previous conversations had achieved. Emily closed her eyes, letting the music and Michael's presence, so different from the man she thought she had hired, wash over her. When the piece ended, she opened her eyes to find him watching her. There was something there, an unexpected connection, and for a moment Emily felt the urge to lean closer. The moment shattered when her phone rang. It was her father, summoning her to an urgent meeting the next day, trouble with one of the expansion projects. I have to go, she said abruptly, standing. Work. Good night, Emily, he replied simply. She hesitated at the door. Michael, thank you for the music, he smiled, a genuine smile that made her realize how rarely she had seen him truly happy. It was my pleasure. The next morning, Emily found Brandon in the lobby of Montgomery Agricultural Enterprises. Her heart raced, not with the old excitement she used to feel, but with apprehension. What are you doing here? She asked, skipping the pleasantries. I came for the meeting. he replied calmly. Didn't your father mention it? Thompson Construction Group is interested in a partnership for the new developments in the Midwest. The surprise must have been evident on her face because Brandon added, I thought you knew. Aren't you in charge of the expansion anymore? The comment, delivered with apparent innocence, struck right at the heart of her current insecurity. Since the wedding, her father had been systematically reducing her involvement in strategic decisions. Of course I am, she lied. I just didn't expect to see you here today. The meeting was an exercise in disguised humiliation. Her father introduced Brandon as a partner with a shared vision, while effectively silencing her, answering questions directed at her, and ignoring her attempts to contribute. At the end, as everyone was leaving, Brandon approached her. Your husband is doing exceptional work, you know, he remarked. He has a natural talent for sustainable engineering. We're considering putting him in charge of the department. I'm happy for him, Emily replied curtly. I must say, Emily, Brandon continued, lowering his voice, when I saw him at your wedding, I never imagined, well, let's just say appearances can be deceiving. There was something in his tone that put her on edge. What do you mean? Nothing, Brandon replied with a smile. Just that you chose better than I expected. In the weeks that followed, Emily noticed subtle changes around the house. A more efficient water filtration system was installed. The lights were replaced with smart LEDs that adjusted their brightness based on natural light. The garden gained a rainwater collection system. All these changes happened without prior consultation, but Emily couldn't bring herself to be upset. Each one represented a noticeable improvement, reducing expenses and environmental impact. One morning, she found Michael in the garden, explaining the irrigation system to Martha, the housekeeper, who seemed genuinely interested. This way you save nearly 60% of the water, he was saying, and the plants stay healthier because they get exactly what they need. No more, no less. Emily watched the scene with a smile. There was something captivating about seeing someone so passionate about their work and willing to share knowledge without condescension. That evening at dinner, she brought up a topic she'd been avoiding. Brandon mentioned they're thinking of promoting you. Michael nodded, finishing his bite before responding. They offered me the lead of the sustainability department. And you accepted? I'm still considering it, he replied, studying her with that piercing gaze that always made her feel exposed. Would you mind? The question caught her off guard. Why would I mind? Our arrangement doesn't include professional decisions. No, he agreed, but Brandon is your ex-fiancé. Working for him in a prominent position might complicate our situation. Our marriage is just a legal agreement, she reminded him, though the words felt strange on her lips. You should make your own career decisions. All right, Michael replied after a pause. Then I'll accept. Something heavy settled between them, a silence filled with unspoken things. Michael, Emily, broke the silence after a few minutes. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. The investor who... She hesitated, searching for the right words. The one who took your company. What about him? You mentioned he patented your inventions. What exactly were they? Michael set down his silverware, and his gaze drifted for a moment as if returning to a painful past. Mostly micro-irrigation systems for small-scale farming, he finally answered. Simple, affordable technology that could be implemented in underserved regions without the need for major infrastructure or specialized maintenance. And did it work? The tests showed water savings of up to 70% compared to traditional methods, with productivity increases between 30% and 45%, he explained, and Emily noticed how his voice came alive when he spoke about his work. For small farmers who depend on every drop of water and every inch of arable land, this could mean the difference between survival and prosperity. Emily felt a growing admiration. This man had dedicated his talent to improving the lives of those with few resources, not to maximizing profits. What happened to the projects after, Michael's expression hardened. As far as I know, they were shelved. The investor realized immediate profits would be limited. Affordable systems for poor people don't generate the returns Wall Street expects. There was bitterness in his voice, the first Emily had detected since meeting him. "That's awful," she remarked, genuinely outraged. "So many people could have benefited." "That's how the world works, Emily," he replied with a sigh. "Some dreams are sacrificed at the altar of profit." That night, for the first time since their marriage, Emily had trouble sleeping. Images of Michael at different moments swirled in her mind, playing piano with his eyes closed, explaining irrigation systems with genuine passion, quietly fixing broken things around the house without expecting recognition. This man, whom she had chosen precisely for his apparent social insignificance as a convenient instrument for revenge, was proving more complex and intriguing by the day. A week later, during a high society charity event in New York City, Emily noticed something that deeply unsettled her. Several women, including some who had once treated her with deference because of her last name, were now approaching Michael with bright smiles and casual touches on his arm. "Your rainwater harvesting project for underserved communities is fascinating, Mr. Carter," said one, a socialite known for her superficial interest in social causes. "Perhaps we could discuss it over lunch sometime." Emily felt an unexpected discomfort, a feeling she hesitated to name as jealousy. It was absurd, after all. Their marriage was a farce, a business transaction. As she watched Michael respond politely but without excessive encouragement, Brandon appeared beside her. "Your husband has become the man of the hour," he remarked, handing her a glass of champagne. "Apparently," she replied dryly. "Interesting how quickly high society forgets someone's origins when there's something to gain, don't you think?" Brandon continued. 3 months ago, they'd have treated him as invisible if they saw him on the street." "What are you implying, Brandon?" "Nothing," he answered with an enigmatic smile. "Just observing human nature. By the way, I'm impressed with his work at the construction company. He has a brilliant mind for engineering." "Thank you," Michael replied, stepping quietly closer. "It's always nice to be recognized for talent, not social standing." There was something in the exchange of glances between the two men that made Emily uneasy, as if they shared a secret from which she was excluded. On the way home, Michael remained unusually quiet. "Didn't you enjoy the party?" Emily asked, trying to lighten the mood. "It's not my scene," he replied simply. "You seemed quite comfortable talking to the senator's wife." Michael looked at her with a faint smile. "Detecting jealousy, Mrs. Carter?" "Don't be ridiculous," she answered quickly, grateful for the darkness of the car that hid her blush. "I just found it curious how someone who claims not to be comfortable in social settings manages to attract so much attention. People are drawn to novelty," he explained with a shrug. "The beggar who became a construction company executive in record time. Soon, they'll find something more interesting to talk about." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next day, during a tense meeting with her father, Emily realized just how much her marriage had affected her position in the company. "The Midwest expansion project is officially out of your hands," Richard announced without preamble. "Brandon Thompson will take over coordination alongside me." "But Dad, I've worked on this project from the start," Emily protested. "I know every detail, every potential challenge. And you also chose to marry a stranger instead of strengthening our alliance with the Thompsons," he replied coldly. "Choices have consequences, Emily." "So that's it? I'm being professionally punished for my personal choices?" "I'm protecting the company's interests," Richard corrected. "Your recent emotional instability doesn't inspire confidence in the shareholders." Emily felt her blood boil. Emotional instability was the euphemism her father always used. When he wanted to dismiss opinions or decisions that went against his own, Brandon offered an extremely favorable partnership deal, Richard continued. "Coincidentally, he also hired your husband for a prominent position. Curious, don't you think?" There was a clear insinuation in his words that hit Emily like a slap. "Are you suggesting Brandon hired Michael to manipulate me?" "I'm merely observing interesting coincidences," Richard replied, standing to signal the end of the meeting. "Think about it, daughter." For days, her father's words echoed in her mind. Was it possible Brandon was using Michael as a pawn in some bigger game? Or worse, Was it possible Michael was consciously or unconsciously cooperating? One afternoon, returning home early from work due to a migraine, Emily found Brandon in her living room speaking with Michael. Both men seemed momentarily startled by her unexpected arrival. "Emily, we weren't expecting you so soon," Brandon remarked, standing. "Clearly," she replied coolly. "What are you doing in my home?" "We were discussing project details," Michael explained. "We needed to review some documents I left here. There was something about the situation that didn't feel entirely honest." Brandon seemed uncomfortably at ease, as if this wasn't his first visit, and the way they both avoided direct eye contact only deepened her suspicions. "Work documents." "Of course," Emily answered, keeping her tone polite but icy. "Don't let my presence interrupt you, excuse me." Later that evening, after Brandon had left, Emily confronted Michael in the library. "Does he come here often?" Michael looked up from his book. "Occasionally. Work matters. In our home. Doesn't the construction group have its own offices?" "Emily," Michael closed the book with a sigh. "What are you really asking?" She hesitated only a moment. "What is your relationship with Brandon? And I don't mean boss and employee." Michael's expression shifted, growing more serious, almost somber. "It's complicated." "Explain it to me," she insisted. "Because I'm starting to feel like the only one in this marriage who doesn't know what's really going on." Michael was silent for so long, Emily thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with restrained emotion. "I knew Brandon before our marriage." The revelation hit Emily like a punch to the gut. "What?" "Not personally," he clarified quickly. "But he knew your name, knew who you were." "Why?" Michael stood up, walking to the window before answering. "Remember the investor I mentioned? The one who took my patents and destroyed my company?" Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "No." "It wasn't exactly Brandon," Michael continued. "It was his father, Frederick Thompson, but Brandon was just starting at the company back then, sat in on some meetings. He knows who I am." "So when he saw me with you at the altar, he recognized me immediately," Michael confirmed. "In fact, I think that's why he looked so shocked, the expression you found so amusing." Emily had to sit down, trying to process the implications of this revelation. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Our agreement was a marriage of convenience, so not absolute honesty," he replied, still looking out the window. "Besides, I doubt you would have chosen me if you'd known. So the job, the closeness, all of it. At first, I took the job to figure out what Brandon was up to," Michael admitted, finally turning to face her. Why would he offer a job to his ex-fiancée's husband, especially one he knew had every reason to hate him? Emily's mind raced, with possibilities, none of them comforting. "And did you figure it out?" "Not entirely," Michael answered, "but I suspect it has something to do with your company's expansion project." "The Midwest," Emily murmured, the pieces starting to fall into place. "My father just officially removed me from overseeing it and handed it to Brandon." Michael nodded slowly. "That explains some documents he was especially eager to see." "What?" "Documents. Feasibility studies mostly. Soil analyses, irrigation projections." Emily stood abruptly, heading for the office downstairs. Michael followed. "My father is selling concessions in Nebraska and Kansas," she explained as she scrolled through her digital files. "Land that's extremely fertile with the right irrigation systems. It's a billion-dollar project." Finding the file she needed, she pulled it up on the large screen. "Look at this. The preliminary analysis showed exceptional irrigation potential for 70% of the area, but the final report cut it to 40%, which significantly lowered the asking price." Michael stepped closer, studying the data with a technical eye. "These numbers are wrong," he concluded after a moment. "The capacity is much higher than reported." "How can you be sure?" "Because I used this exact type of soil and topography analysis for my systems in the Southwest," he explained. "With the right technology, you could efficiently irrigate at least 65% of this land." Emily shuddered. If Michael was right, the land was worth far more than the negotiated price. "Brandon is deceiving my father," she concluded. "Or worse, my father is deliberately undervaluing our assets for Brandon." "There's a third possibility," Michael suggested carefully. that Brandon is using insider knowledge about the land's true potential to close what looks like a fair deal, knowing he can later implement technology that will multiply its value. Technology like yours, Emily finished, understanding dawning. That's why the sudden interest in hiring and promoting you. And why the frequent visits, the interest in my personal files, Michael agreed. He wants my old research, my prototypes. Emily felt a rising anger, not just at Brandon potentially deceiving her family, but mostly at him using Michael, exploiting his talent all over again without proper recognition. We need concrete proof, she said, determined, and we need to figure out if my father is a victim or an accomplice. In the following days, Emily and Michael worked together, analyzing documents, cross-referencing information, building a solid case. With each discovery, Emily's admiration for Michael's intellect and sharpness grew. One evening, exhausted, after hours hunched over maps and reports, they shared a bottle of wine on the balcony, watching the distant lights of New York City. "Why did you accept my proposal that day in the park?" Emily asked, the question she'd avoided since the beginning. "If you already knew Brandon, if you knew who I was." Michael contemplated his glass before answering. "At first, for revenge," he admitted. "I saw a chance to get close to the Thompsons' world again, maybe find some way to make things right." And after, a melancholy smile formed on his lips. "After, I think I found something I didn't expect." The look they exchanged held more than words could express. Emily felt her heart race in a way it never had with Brandon, even in their best moments. "Michael, The moment was shattered by the shrill ring of the phone. It was Jessica, her best friend, in a panic. "Emily, turn on the TV now, the news channel." Heart pounding, Emily rushed inside, followed by Michael. On the screen, a reporter stood in front of the imposing Thompson Construction Group building. Frederick Thompson, founder and chairman of the group, collapsed during a board meeting and has been hospitalized in critical condition. Sources indicate that the succession plan previously secured for his son Brandon may now be in jeopardy following revelations of questionable dealings. Emily and Michael exchanged stunned glances. "This changes everything," she murmured. The next morning, Brandon arrived at the mansion, visibly shaken. "My father had a stroke," he said without preamble when Emily met him in the living room. "The doctors don't know if he'll fully recover." Despite all their resentment, Emily felt genuine compassion. "I'm so sorry, Brandon. The board is questioning my position," he continued, running a nervous hand through his hair. "Someone leaked information about our dealings with Montgomery." Emily kept her expression neutral, though her heart raced. "What kind of information?" "Suggestions that we're acquiring land below market value," he replied, studying her intently. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "How would I know?" she answered calmly. "You and my father cut me out of the project, remember?" The tension between them was palpable when Michael entered the room. Brandon immediately stiffened. "Michael, I need you to come with me now. Emergency meeting at the office." "He's not going," Emily said, standing. "Actually, Brandon, I think you and I need to have an honest talk." "I don't have time for about how your father destroyed Michael's company and stole his patents," she interrupted, "and how you're trying to do the same with our land in the Midwest." Brandon visibly paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Michael cut in, stepping forward. "Just like you know that implementing my original systems on that land would triple its market value in under 2 years. A heavy silence fell before Brandon finally sighed, suddenly looking older and weary. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said, sinking into a chair. "My father, he always did business this way. I just followed the model." "Exploiting people, stealing ideas," Emily challenged, unable to contain her outrage. "Maximizing opportunities," Brandon corrected, but without conviction. "When I saw Michael at your wedding, I panicked. I thought it was some kind of trap that you'd found out about the past. Then I realized it was pure coincidence and decided to turn the tables in my favor by hiring me. Michael finished. Your ideas were always brilliant," Brandon admitted. "My father recognized that immediately, but he decided it would be more profitable to own them than to pay for them," Michael concluded bitterly. Brandon didn't respond right away, staring at his hands as if searching for answers in them. "What do you want from me now?" he finally asked. "Money? Public recognition? A position in the company?" "Justice," Michael replied simply. "Acknowledgement of intellectual property and the chance to see my inventions benefit those who truly need them." Emily watched, the man beside her with growing admiration. Even after everything, his main concern wasn't revenge or financial compensation, but the social impact of his work. "And complete transparency in dealings with my family," she added. "A fair reassessment of the land based on its true potential." Brandon finally looked up. "And in return?" "We won't take what we know to your company's board," Emily answered, "or to the press." The negotiations stretched on for days. Brandon, pressured by his father's hospitalization and the board's scrutiny, finally agreed to the terms. Michael would have his original patents restored, and a fund would be established to implement his irrigation systems in underserved communities. The Montgomery lands would be reassessed transparently. At home, after signing the agreements, Emily and Michael celebrated with a bottle of champagne on the balcony that had become their favorite spot. "How does it feel to have your creations back?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Vindicated," he replied with a smile. "But mostly hopeful. Those systems can really make a difference for small farmers." Emily studied his profile against the night sky, amazed at the shift in her own perception. The beggar she'd chosen to humiliate her ex-fiancé had turned out to be a man of unwavering principles and a generous heart. "What about us?" she asked softly. "Our agreement was for a year, but circumstances have changed considerably." Michael turned to face her. "They certainly have," he agreed, his eyes locked on hers. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful you approached me on that park bench, even for the wrong reasons. Sometimes questionable decisions lead us to destinations we'd never find otherwise," he mused. "Like a fake. Marriage leading to real feelings?" Emily suggested, gathering the courage to voice what had been growing inside her. Michael's smile lit up his face in a way that made her heart race. "Exactly like that," he agreed, taking her hand gently. "What do you propose now, Mrs. Carter?" "That perhaps we need to renew our vows," she replied, leaning toward him. This time, for the right reasons. 6 months later, an intimate ceremony brought together only close friends and reconciled family at an urban farming community project in the heart of New York City, one of the first implemented by the newly established Carter Foundation for Sustainable Development. Emily, in a simple yet elegant dress, looked at Michael with genuine love, impeccable in a suit that highlighted the dignity he'd always possessed, even in the toughest times. Her father, initially resistant, but eventually won over by his son-in-law's character and the impressive results of the land reassessment, escorted the bride to the small altar, adorned with flowers grown by the local community. Brandon, in a gesture of sincere reconciliation, arrived accompanied by Frederick, who, though still recovering from his stroke, insisted on honoring the couple and publicly announcing the return of the patents and the creation of a joint fund for social projects. As they exchanged heartfelt vows, Emily reflected on the irony of her journey. Seeking revenge through a fake marriage, she had found true love, using a man she once considered beneath her due to his temporary financial situation. She had discovered an exceptional soul who now complemented hers in ways she never thought possible. "I love you," she whispered, as they walked through applause after the ceremony. Not for the brilliant engineer, not for the talented pianist, but for the man who kept his dignity and compassion even when the world turned its back on him. "And I love you," he replied, squeezing her hand. Not for the powerful heiress, not for the shrewd businesswoman, but for the woman who learned to look beyond appearances and had the courage to admit when she was wrong. Amid the lush gardens symbolizing renewal and hope, the couple who had come together for revenge now celebrated a bond built on mutual respect, genuine admiration, and above all, true love, proving that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most perfect endings. The end of the story. And you, what did you think of this tale of redemption and true love? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us if you've ever been in a situation where appearances deceived you. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.